show?
Backface show.
You're the backface show with the backface in your show.
Yeah, I think we're good.
Okay, I think we've sound checked enough. We gotta cut the foreplay out. What are we talking about today? Who are we? I'm LukeMadrid. I'm the host of the show.
What are we?
You should know that by now.
Haskins, executive producer.
He producifies the show.
Yeah, I'm the one who comes up with ideas for shows.
And, you
or
know...
you do. Because we all know Luke doesn't do anything but talk.
You talk so much shit. I drive a little bit.
Oh, yeah.
I don't even hit anything with the car. It's incredible. Except my rims sometimes. Because I'm not possessed of perfect accuracy at all moments. I get a little excited parallel parking.
So what are we?
We are not just listening to the rabbit as it weeps on the phone, staring into our Xbox, pretending to pay attention. No. We are going to take this rabbit on an airplane out to Sweden, feed it some mushrooms, and put it through an initiatory test, the likes of which it has never experienced.
We're talking old school.
Yes, we're talking old school. We only do this every 90 years.
So we're talking about Midsommar.
We're talking about Midsommar, the Ari Aster film.
Yeah.
That came out this last weekend. You should be hearing this the following weekend.
And this is totally in our forte because one of the main things displayed in this movie is ritual magic.
Occultism.
Runes.
I don't remember any boobs.
Oh, there was tits.
Was there?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, there was.
Yeah, there was some titties. There was tits and dicks, dude, and there's like everything.
Oh, there was.
There's everything in this movie.
I blocked it out. It was
spoiler alerts right now.
Spoiler alerts. If you want to see Midsommar and
go and do it, and then like come talk about it.
You don't want spoilers? Don't listen to this podcast right now because we're going to spoil all of Midsommar. There's some of you that just probably don't even watch horror movies and don't mind, so that's cool. And then there's some of you that don't want spoilers. Go see the movie before listening to this. So we've warned you now for like almost a minute, it feels like. So yeah, now we can.
You've been warned.
You've been effing warned. We are going to spoil Midsommar right now. So
spoil it hard.
If you are still listening and don't want to be spoiled, then you're dumb.
Yeah, we're gonna butcher your movie experience. Watch.
Okay, so where do we start with Midsommar?
I think we should start at the beginning.
Okay, so I'm going to say what I like about Midsommar and why I would go see it again is because it reminded me of The Shining. It's hard to say what exactly reminded me of The Shining.
Beginning. Even before The Shining part.
Okay, well, in The Shining, in the peak of the action...
Well, number one, it's got some...
It's a snowstorm. It's cold. That's how The Shining sort of ratchets up. It ratchets up into this snowstorm in the darkness of the season. And...
Oh, you're going straight to the deep end, aren't we?
You know, and then in Midsommar, it's kind of like the opposite. Like all the action peaks during, Midsommar, during this festival with the maypole.
Well, okay, so number one, it opens up weird for a movie, right? Like, you gotta agree with me there. Like, they got some blatant in-your-face symbolism, just like, it's there. It's like, here's an initiatory thing. They're just like, here you go. 4 seasons. Let's do this.
She's got the checkerboard floor in the kitchen. She has...
Like, even before that, like the opening scene.
What happens? I don't remember.
Oh, you don't remember? It, like, shows the seasons. It's, like, winter, spring, summer, autumn.
Where does it show that?
It shows that, like, right in the front, like, it's a mural. Like, the same artwork as, like,
the rest
of the movie.
Oh, yeah, it flashes, like, some occult artwork at you.
So, first of all, it's like, here it is in your face, This is an initiatory thing. It's like right blatant in your face. And then it opens up, it's serene, cold, freaking hillside, winter, just trees and shit in the snow and like crazy singing. And then it's like where you live and it's just cell phone noise,
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, it's just like, okay, here's the difference.
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, it shows like nature and then stark contrast. Boom, residential zone. So it's a lot like Koyaanisqatsi, the Philip Glass music visual movie thing. It's a classic. It's a lot like that, where they juxtapose the scene of nature with like a factory. But in this case, it's just a suburban hell. You know what I liked about those first scenes is they made it feel so cold and dark. I remember I was going through a really tough time in my life. That's how everything felt. And so in the beginning, the main character, Danny, is going through a crisis where her parents are pretty much murdered by her sister, who's suicidal. And, of course, she kills herself, too, the sister. Interesting to note.
Well, like, first it opens up, and she's just like, you're like, this is a terrible person. You just absolutely, like, hate her character when it first opens up. And then you find out her parents dies, and then you're like, oh, man, that sucks, right?
She just seems like a regular person to me.
Maybe.
Because the movie has a lot of intuition going on. So she's worried about her parents. She's worried about her sister because her sister wrote her some cryptic email.
Yeah, and she can't get a hold of him.
And her sister's all bipolar and is always threatening suicide. And then she can't get a hold of her parents either. And she's like, I wonder if something terrible's happened. Well, turns out the sister is like rigged up the cars to a hose and is like filled up the parents' bedroom with carbon monoxide while they sleep and has also killed herself. And it's a ritual suicide, basically, that she performs on herself and her parents. And you know, when Danny, the main character, finds out, she's destroyed. Leading up to this, the boyfriend's thinking about dumping her.
You don't even know the boyfriend's name. Like,
it's Christian.
Okay.
Interesting. So it's Christian and Danny. Now here's interesting to note, Danny is also the name of the little boy in The Shining.
Yeah, so like the connections to The Shining isn't so like,
it's not tenuous. It's there.
It's there, and like there's a lot of cinematography as they're getting to the actual scenes.
When they're walking through the forest, it mimics the sort of shot that they had following the beetle in The Shining on the way to the Overlook.
And the drive there, they have like different cinematography, but it's still the same sort of feel of like a long winding road, but like everything's different. It's almost like mirror imaged.
One thing they did really well is during the first trip scene when they eat mushrooms, they have the camera move about the character in a way that is a lot like The Shining, where they will frame up the scene in one way and then the camera will swing or move, and then the character will still be in the frame, you know, with their back to the camera, but the scene has changed and the way the camera pans and follows, almost like a video game. But they do that a little bit in The Shining, like how the camera follows Danny on the bike and how it leads through the different hallways. It sort of does a similar thing in this film, except instead of going through hallways, you're being treated to like things in different areas of the foreground, midground, and background. Like the background will completely change, you know? Like, oh, there's this thing happening in the background, and then the camera will swing, and then there's other group of people is doing this thing. And then the camera will swing again, and the other group has changed what they're doing. And it's sort of, I don't know how to explain it. It's a lot like The Shining. It's hard to explain.
Well, the one thing they did do right is they did depict psychedelics accurately.
Oh, almost, yeah. I turned to Andrew. I was like, they nailed it.
Yeah, just how it looks when you're on mushroom. Yeah, they kind of got it. You can't get the headspace. They try to. But they definitely got the visuals down.
They did a pretty good job. They like things are moving but not moving, and like she's like in the how I was explaining the camera, she sort of inadvertently, as she's trying to get away from one group, walks into another group who's having a good time, and they all kind of look at her as they're laughing, and so she thinks they're laughing at her, which is something I think everyone's been through.
Yeah, everyone gets that on mushrooms, and then she turns to like the one guy she just met, and you know, he's like, no, trying to reassure. And, like, we've all been there on one end of the spectrum or another in that experience if you've done psychedelics. It's like, no, we're all cool here, you know? We're all tripping out. It's all fun, you know? No one's trying to be mean
right.
to anyone.
And she, like, runs off to the bathroom, which is something we may have all done. And
oh my
of course,
God.
it just gets worse.
Oh, my God. It's like they pulled, like, aspects out of psychedelic experiences I've had. And they're like, we're going to put this into the movie.
She starts running away, and then she passes out. But
you can get trapped in a bathroom. And, like, they didn't really show how scary it was. They just showed, like, her sister's face.
Like,
like in the mirror.
Yeah. It's like kind of a classic horror movie thing to do. Just not bad. You want to do that in the beginning of the movie. Well, okay. I think what I was saying, but badly, is that there are things that characters are doing in the background that tell the story. A lot like when all the hotel people are packing up and leaving in the beginning of the movie. There's a lot of storytelling by things going on in the background. That's sort of how the whole story is told, is like there's these things brewing in the background. Things are ratcheting up slowly, sort of how they do in The Shining. There's tension building. There's slowly the lies and the inconsistencies begin to build up, which is what they do in The Shining as well. Like if you watch really closely, Room 237 talks about this, the documentary on Netflix, where if you follow all the different hallways in The Shining, when you go into the office where Jack Nicholson is being told about the hotel and he's meeting the owner, he looks like the damn president of the hotel. There's a big bright window there that technically can't be there because
he's in like the center of the building, and then there's like this window in the back of his office.
And you get if you listen long enough, if you actually listen to the dialogue in The Shining, you get the impression that Jack really has a problem with alcohol, that he beats Danny, that he really can't control himself, and they're in denial a lot of the film. The film is a lot about denial. Like, it was probably the dad that did those terrible things to Danny, and so there's also that building of denial and tension in the film because, like, the boyfriend Christian wants to break up with Danny, and Danny wants to go on the trip, but the group doesn't really want to take her because she's going through this crisis, but they feel like they kind of like have to, and there's like this bluff where they think maybe she won't go at the last minute, but then she totally goes at the last minute, and there's this building of like, how is this all going to come out in the end, you know? How is this tension? Like, because much like in The Shining, they're being led to some isolated place for a certain amount of time where they have to coexist, you know?
Oh yeah, and spoilers, they're all like, welcome, welcome to everyone when they get there, and then they turn, like, the guy looks right at her, Danny, and he's just like, welcome home, you know, like, and it's like a total kind of like, okay, this is some foreshadowy shit.
Because he's luring the other guys. He's like, oh, yeah, all those Swedish chicks, you know, they're going to be down. You know, he's luring them with that. He's telling all the single guys that, like, there's going to be horny Swedish chicks. And it is a fertility festival. They know that much. So they're presuming there's going to be some humping going on. And there's, like, they meet another couple there that
From England?
Is, like, engaged. I don't know why they were there.
Because the other guy from the village was bringing them back, because apparently that's what this village does, is they bring people back to it and kill them.
Apparently.
Yeah, they get like, it's so crazy.
So there's this theme in the movie of, you know, not being true to your intuition and not listening to your intuition, and like it just leads to a bad place, which is, man, that's exactly for me what The Shining became about after you look at the deeper hidden meanings. This is going to keep coming up. I'm going to be relating it to The Shining. One reason I'm doing that is because the whole time I was watching it, I was thinking they are trying to be on The Shining's level, and they might possibly have done it. We'll have to see, because there has to be a deeper current there, because The Shining cuts all the way to the evil and the demons of America and this continent. Well, what happens right in the beginning? What sets off the action that makes them think, oh, this is going to be bad? Talk about this, Andrew.
Okay, so this is like the first day at the festival, right?
Yeah.
So we're at the festival, they're all like, okay, this is going to be cool. They're like, okay, what are we doing tomorrow? And he says this one word, and then what was the name of the word? Do you have it on?
I heard that it's not really a real word.
But it's an old medieval term for ritualistic sacrifice.
It's like a noodle or something.
Yeah.
A noodle.
It's
like AUNDU. It's a fancy word.
Yeah.
I heard it wasn't an actual word, so I'm not going to even... I didn't write it down.
Okay, because apparently it's like a medieval term in Swedish for ritualistic sacrifice. And the black dude who's like the scholar... And this is another thing that this movie totally reminds me of Cabin in the Woods, with like the people they're trying to kill and like the archetypes that they fulfill. But the scholar, he's like, dude, are you serious? When the guy tells him about this, and then there they are, like sitting at like a...
So it is a real word.
Yeah, it is a real word. So it's like one of those like occult words that you'd only know if you studied medieval Swedish, you know?
That's really messed up to not tell the rest of the people in your group.
Yeah.
Because they're all sleeping in this mass bunk sort of
that's
area.
like the coolest looking set I've ever seen.
Because it's got a bunch of art on the walls. Yeah, the intensity, like all the work that went into the film, it's just incredible.
Yeah, it's almost like Burning Man level.
I got to stop talking about how great the movie is, because I loved it. Anyway.
Yeah, so they're like at this banquet, and they're all standing there, and it's such a great scene because
they're not allowed to sit and eat the food, right?
Yeah, the guy's like... Wait.
And they're sitting at tables that look like a giant rune.
Yeah, so it's this big old rune. Was that Ophelia?
Oh, that's
they're
right.
Standing, and they ask, like, they turn over and they're like, hey, do you know when do we sit down? And the Swedish dude who, gave him the mushrooms earlier in the movie is just like, yeah, we just stand until it feels right to sit, And they're just standing there until, like, the old folks come up.
Which is a lie. He could have just said, well, until the high priest and the high priestess sit first. They could have just said that, but that's part of the tension. He's like, no, well, until it feels right. Well, it's like, well, it feels right now.
Yeah, that's like how an American would think of it.
It's yeah, it feels right now to sit down. What are you actually saying? Okay, so here's the rune. All the tables are arranged in the Elder Futhark rune, Othelia, which corresponds to inherited property. Inherited property.
Properly.
Group experience. Group order. So that's, yeah.
And they're all standing there as a group, so, it's all very correspondent.
But upside down, it means slavery, bad karma, and man, I can't talk today. Homelessness.
Oh, man.
So some of them are homeless, and some of them are becoming like slaves to the experience. And so pretty much they all sit down, have their final meal, and then they go gather by the rocks. And this is the part that you were like, oh, this is just like Conan.
Well, yeah, okay, so, like, this is one thing that I also get while I'm tripping. Like, I look at big old rock structures, and I'm like, okay.
You just think of all the morbid crap that, like,
humans have done over, like, the thousands of years that we've been on this planet, and I'm just like, oh, this is totally where, like, weird savages would, like, sacrifice somebody exactly like this, exactly there, in this way, and, like, they show the cliff, and these people just come to the top. I'm like, oh, dude, are they really going to do this? Is this really happening right now? And not only does it happen, and you're like, oh, shit, it happened, they show every gruesome detail. Yeah, so they just show the most gruesomest, like, scene of a lady's face being smashed in. And then the old guy who jumps off, he's just like, he just goes feet first and breaks his legs. So they got that realism down.
Yeah, that was horrible to watch. But he's sort of, like, punished for falling leg first. Because he has to, like, lay there in his indignity, suffering, and they're all, like, booing at him.
No, they did that. Like, and here's the funniest part, is, like, one, it seemed like there was elements of, like, feminism in this movie, but, like, I didn't know if they were making fun of it, or if they're being pro-feminism the whole time. But there's this one part where they start doing this weird, like, ah! All together and crazy, and it's just, it reminds me of that thing on like British TV where all those chicks were like screaming into microphones and calling it like
what show was that? Because we watched it on the YouTube.
Yeah.
What would you Google, Andrew, to find that?
Oh, you just look up feminist singing cringe, and it's the first thing that pops up.
It's like if I was going ah, and you were going oh, and we were all kind of disharmonically like going together.
Yeah, it's something called Sirens or something, some nutty thing. It's like a cry, scream, sing thing. I don't know.
Well, this is I think that he grabbed this from Enter the Void, because when his little sister starts crying and screaming when he kills himself in Enter the Void, spoiler, that's what the movie's about. Sorry. It has like the phone starts vibrating at the humming of her screaming, and it sort of envelops the whole experience. It really reminded me of that, because the music doubles over her crying during her crisis in the beginning of the movie, and then that same disharmonic singing or screaming thing is overlaid elsewhere in the film. It's pretty great. It builds tension.
Yeah, like, you don't know whether they're empathizing with his pain, like they can feel his pain because they're all acting like a one solid unit, or if they're booing the fact that he didn't like die in the beginning. And then like the three hammer bearers walk up with their sashes on, and they just, after the first smack, you're just like, okay, guy's dead, but there's three of them, so all three of them need a whack.
Very bizarre. Aren't those his kids?
I don't know if they're his kids. But
presumably that's their kids, right?
That'd be cool, but that's like...
Here's what I was thinking, because she's already been through that ceremony before, because her sister killed her parents.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
That's what I was thinking what the mallet symbolized. Or what that scene symbolized with the mallet, I should say.
See, and like in this scene, you're supposed to be like, okay, this is where it gets really, really intense. But for me, that's where all the tension cut. You know, I'm just like, okay, cool. It's Conan. It's just Conan land.
Okay,
They're
so
in the
you
old
were
times.
so you were warming up to their culture at that point. You're like, oh, so that's what this is about.
Yeah, they're just old school. Like old, not like, oh, old school. No, these are guys old fucking school. This is like pre-Christian old school. This is like dawn of frickin' society old school. These people are old school. And they only get to do this like every 90 years, if you can believe what they say, because that seems to be a theme that they just lie. They just lie about everything to everyone, even themselves, about what's going on.
That's kind of true. Maybe they do it more often than every 90 years, because how does it make sense that they do it every 90 years if you're only allowed to live to 72?
Yeah.
So that means that there would be people that were pulling off these rituals and ceremonies that technically couldn't have been alive to experience them themselves?
Yeah. And
That doesn't really make sense.
Especially when they foreshadow, ultimate spoiler alert, when they foreshadow the whole thing about the guy telling Danny that his parents got burnt up in a fire and that's why he can empathize with her, because they're both orphans. Because at the end they have the fire where they burn everything up. It's pretty great. It's like almost like they show up to a Burning Man scene.
Okay, so when they're sitting at the tables, they're sitting at the Ophelia rune, tables that are set up like the Ophelia rune, which is inherited property, group order, and experience. Then, when they go to do the ritual suicide after that dinner, at the rock, they cut their hands, which is foreshadowed in some of the artwork we see elsewhere in the film. And they smear the blood, each of them, on a stone with some inscribed runes upon it. The most central one...
The one she, smears the blood on.
...is Raido, or Raido.
It's the one that looks like an R.
We know our tarot. I don't really know runes.
I was studying runes. I can't find any of my books now. I don't know what happened to them, but...
So that rune, specifically, that she smears the blood on...
It means journey.
Travel, relocation, or dance of life.
Yeah, and like it being inverse or something is supposed to mean like...
Crisis, rigidity, injustice, and death.
Is also being lost.
Also, there's the algiz, or algiz.
Angiz.
Oh, that really tortures it. But that corresponds to hidden danger, taboo, and warning, because it's upside down.
All right, and
also protection sheet. Tear.
Tear was the other one she smeared her hand on. So she smeared her hand on Raido and was it Tewaz?
Yeah, she smeared her hand also on the Tewaz rune.
Tewaz.
Which is justice, authority, analysis, and rationality. Which is what happens afterwards, because the engaged couple freaks out. They just start like full-on 9/11 screaming about it, like, oh my god,
yeah, you people are sick.
And like they have to like calm them down.
And like the one lady who's like, she is straight up like, for all you occult buffs, she's the magician. It's
yeah,
like there's tons of tarot in this. And like
she's the Hierophant.
Yeah, well, she's the magician. She's the...
Okay.
She is the magician card.
Because there is the Hierophant who guards the book, huh?
Yeah.
Okay. There's the guy who guards like the sacred book, the sacred volumes, and then like the lady has the symbol of... Doesn't she have Ansu's on her? Vision, leadership, power of words.
Yeah, Ansu is one of the Odin runes.
Okay, so
it has
she
to do with magical power.
So she has that embroidered on her outfit.
Yeah. So she's definitely the magician in the entire thing.
Because Odin's a magician.
Yeah.
Okay. That's good to establish that. Then also there's the other rune on the tablet she smears her blood on before she casts herself off the rock. It corresponds to transportation, sending, communication, and once again, sending, as Awas. Not Iwas, like in the Crowley Thelema episode, but Ehwas? I don't know, man. That's not my forte.
Awas.
Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
So they cast themselves off the rock. Then
yes.
then the kid. But now this is another like little hint and a nod to the fact that, because it's hard to tell in the film if they're portraying like radical feminism as a positive or if they're portraying it as a spooky negative, or both. I kind of think both. It's both triumphant and meaningful, but also it's misguided, insincere, and brutal.
Yeah, it's good for some things and not for others. Like, if you want to dance around a pole, probably feminism, but, like...
But that's not really feminism. That's ancient. The maypole's ancient, and the maypole itself is like a giant penis.
But like
they're like running around Pan's giant penis. That's how I've had it explained.
They're still doing some feminine thing, like dancing and having fun like that, you know?
Can't guys do that?
Well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with dudes doing feminine stuff. It's just that, like, anytime you add an ism on the end of anything, it becomes like just
evil.
A bunch of Nazis and stuff.
We're not really isms people here at the Whole Rabbit, even though we talk about the ones we're biased towards quite a bit openly. Let's move on. So they smear the blood on that thing. They cast themselves off. This is what I was trying to say. The thing is the woman jumps face first, boom, makes everyone happy, works out. Then the guy sort of like pussies out and like jumps leg first, which ends up being a lot of like pain and suffering. Like that's a lot like Christian in the movie, who really wants to break up with Danny, but he's kind of pussyfooting about it, and so he basically has to go through the long, slow death because he's not going to commit. Oh,
so there it is. It is like a metaphor of how they go about what they're doing.
Yeah, because she goes all in, and then she becomes the May Queen. But then he sort of like half-asses it and is like, I don't know, he's half in, half out, and he lands leg first, and they have to kill him slowly. That's sort of, I thought.
He was dead with the first blow. They just added the 2 other blows just
it was because. Ritual.
It's pretty great.
That's like the cruel indignity of old age, that they, they're doing it because they, like life isn't, okay, so right before that, they have a ceremony where they're like, hot but no hotter,
This high and no higher.
This high and no higher. So
this hot and no hotter, and she hands off the torches to the 2 people who jump off the cliff, and they're like, "This is just before the dinner," and then they have the dinner, and then they jump off, and they're all like, "Oh my God, this is crazy!" And suddenly you see the boyfriend of the British couple who the engaged couple. They're just like, he's gone. He's like, you just don't see him anymore. You see the girl, and she's asking where he is, but he's gone.
They're telling her, like, oh,
he left.
He took off. And it doesn't make sense because they're engaged. They go everywhere together. It's kind of clear by that point because it's like zoomed out. Danny's taking notice of this conversation that like they've probably done something with this guy because he full on flipped out. They're not even allowed to really know about where they are or even what ceremony they're fully involved in. It's very secretive.
Yeah, and they always dismiss it like, oh, you'll probably laugh at it. It's just some of the greatest stuff. But, like, the one thing is that Danny becomes the Empress card by becoming the May Queen in her dance competition, which was, like, I gotta say, psychedelic dance competition, that was cool.
That was very cool.
And that's exactly what you should be doing when you're high on, like, psychedelics like that, is you should be doing something active with like a goal.
Well, there's some interesting foreshadowing besides that where there's one scene where these girls are hacking some wood thing apart with an axe, and he asks, oh, what are they doing? They're playing Skin the Fool. And there's the one character who's really funny, who's always telling jokes and is our comic relief during the mushroom trip. Well, he ends up playing the part of the fool. Because after they jump off the cliffs, they burn the bodies, and they like sprinkle the ashes by this old ancestral tree, which just looks like a big, knocked over tree.
Yeah, it looks like a rotting tree.
And our fool, one of the characters that is from America that comes with them on the trip,
vape in hand all the time.
He pees on the tree, and that makes him the fool, I guess, because he's an idiot. And then, they I guess you find out that they skin him.
Yeah, they skin the fool.
They skin the fool. Which, in the tarot tradition, you never kill the fool.
Yeah, you're not supposed to kill the fool. You're supposed to be so repugnant that he's beyond contempt.
Yeah.
That, like, it's almost a worse fate to leave him in his foolishness.
But they kill him right away.
Yeah, they gotta, get rid of him. And so, right after Danny wins her psychedelic dance competition, she becomes May Queen. They crown her, and they do a big ceremony, and everyone's just stoked. But, while she was dancing, this was another feminist thing. They start doing feminist jazz hands instead of, clapping or anything, and it is just one of the funniest...
Where's the feminist jazz hands from, Andrew? I'm not...
Oh, it was, this movement in colleges. They're all like, oh, clapping's triggering. And, I'm glad Rona gets it, because he's been going to college and stuff for doing other classes.
Well, so the one guy uses the clapping to control Christian while he's under the psychedelic influence.
Yeah.
Is that kind of related to it, you think? Because
Yeah,
they show
I
that in the
think so.
trailer.
Yeah, I think so. Like,
so in their culture, clapping is a sign of like, maybe they use that to dominate, like shut up or like.
Yeah, it sort of like creates like an explosion in like their psychedelic ether.
Okay, so that right there is showing that, okay, maybe there is some truth to that feminist claim if somebody's sensitive enough, clapping can be just off-putting and overwhelming and like aura distorting. So that's one way how they're like, paying service to the idea.
Well, again, they're probably making fun of it because like the one thing is that she becomes May Queen, and then she's in control of like the psychedelic energy. And that was the big thing of my own like understanding of psychedelicness is now she's doing the banquet for the May Queen, so she's in charge. She's like she sits down and everyone else sits down like before, like exactly like before. And then she grabs her fork and knife, and then everyone grabs their fork and knife. And the one thing was that like her boyfriend Christian couldn't really handle the energy because he's used to dominating the situation.
He's all slinked over like on the side of the table, and
he's in disharmony with what's going on because she has like literally the backing of everybody else's psychedelic energy, and they're all tripping, and they're all just like going along with it like a hive mind. It's pretty dope.
Have you like if you're on a trip, that happens sometimes where you'll have someone who's going through a crisis, and by the gravity of their psychological situation, they end up becoming the focal point of everyone else's trip. Like, oh, I'm having this terrible vision, this terrible experience, this horrible thing happened to me, and now I'm crying and I need all this attention. And then, before you know it, the whole trip is like everyone's just like serving this like person. This like everyone is orbiting around this person, trying to comfort them, trying to give them what they need. Everyone's attending to like that one person, and now everyone's like an extension of their emotional bandwidth, so to speak. I think that's a motif you see in festivals and in psychedelic spaces, and the fact that she is so powerful that her feelings and her emotions, as capricious as they may be, because they're prone to change at any moment. We see that one moment she's fine, the next moment she's like running away and screaming and crying, and now everyone is linked to that now. Everyone is drawn into that energy, and that's something that can happen in the psychedelic space. From what I understand, Ari Aster, the director, partially based this on a breakup he went through, presumably going on a trip and having a psychedelic experience. That's kind of the one thing that if you Google explaining Midsommar, that's what you'll find. You'll find that explanation of Ari talking about it. And so I naturally just went right past it and didn't even look at it because I've seen it happen a million times at festivals.
Well, like we've heard what other people said about Midsommar during, like, while we were just looking up some stuff before doing this. But, like, why don't you tell our audience what you think of Midsommar and what you think it's talking about?
Oh, what I actually think is going on in Midsommar?
Yeah.
Okay, so in the same way that The Shining was tapping into the deeper currents within the American psyche, basically I think they incorporated, part of Ari's inspiration, even if it was completely subconscious or unintentional, was Led Zeppelin's Stairway to Heaven. Partially I think this because his first movie, Heredity, had to do with goetic spirits of the Lemegeton, and if you look at the Stairway to Heaven album art, it has the hermit, of course, and it has the sigils that the band took on, one of which is Zoso. Presumably, Ari Aster knows a tiny bit about ritual magic and about the story of that band, and may be knowledgeable about the occult significance of the song Stairway to Heaven. There's a couple things we could dissect about it. First of all, it's about a woman who's going to buy the Stairway to Heaven. Like, if you break down the lyrics in the song, it reminds me a lot of the movie. And most importantly about Stairway to Heaven, it's the most like popular song ever on the radio. It's been played more times than any other song, I think. Man, if you play it backwards, there is some spooky, seemingly hidden messages in there, And that's conceivable because in Thelema, you're encouraged to, I think it might be the AA or it might be the OTO, where you're encouraged to learn how to speak backwards and not mimic things. Like, you actually just have to be able to think backwards and speak backwards. I don't even know how that's possible, but you play some music from that era backwards, you get spooky hidden messages. It's called reverse masking. I did a whole presentation on this in high school, and I scared lots of straight-laced Christian people about it. So I'm familiar with the topic. Okay, Stairway to Heaven, just normally, there's a lady who's sure that all that glitters is gold, and she's buying a stairway to heaven. When she gets there, she knows if the stars are all closed, with a word she can get what she came for. She's buying a stairway to heaven. This is the symbol of a woman who can always gets what she wants, regardless of even if it's proper or if it's, the store is open or not. Then this symbolism in the movie kind of comes in here. There's a sign on the wall, but she wants to be sure because sometimes words have two meanings. In a tree by the brook, there's a songbird who sings. Sometimes all of our thoughts are misgiving. It makes me wonder. There's a feeling I get when I look to the west, and my spirit is crying for leaving. In my thoughts I have seen rings of smoke through the trees and the voices of those who stand looking. That sounds just like the movie. And it's whispered that soon, if we all call the tune, then the piper will lead us to reason, and a new day will dawn for those who stand long, and the forests will echo with laughter. Just like the maypole. If there's a bustle in your hedgerow, don't be alarmed now. It's just a spring clean for the May Queen. Yes, there's two paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on. Sort of like when she has to choose who to sacrifice, and that she can choose to stay or to go. And also, if there's a bustle in your hedgerow, if you hear screaming or if you hear humping coming from the other room, don't be alarmed now. It's just your old life being cleaned away, which is exactly what happens to her. Your head is humming and it won't go. In case you don't know, the piper's calling you to join him. Dear lady, can you hear the wind blow, and did you know your stairway lies on the whispering wind? So it's recapitulating what it is what is her stairway to heaven? Her stairway to heaven is not with Christian. It's with Pele. There's two ways to go. Do you want to go back to the old quote-unquote Christian world, or do you want to go back to join this new family? And as we wind on down the road, our shadows taller than our soul, there walks a lady we all know who shines white light and wants to show how everything still turns to gold. And if you listen very hard, the tune will come to you at last. When all are one and one is all. To be a rock and not to roll. She's buying a stairway to heaven. Boom, that's the song. And if you play the song backwards, there's some spooky messages. Now, specifically the one I want to talk about. You get messages throughout the whole thing. For instance, the first thing you hear when you play Stairway to Heaven backwards is, play backwards, hear words sung, creepy. But specifically the part that goes, if there's a bustle in your hedgerow. What, you don't want me to sing it? Whatever.
No,
okay,
not really.
So in reverse, verse basically says, here's to my sweet Satan, the one whose suffering makes us sad, whose power is Satan. Then it says there was a little tool shed where they made us suffer, sweet Satan, something like that. Well, in the movie where they take the fiancé guy, that's where they torture him, is in the tool shed.
I thought it was the chicken coop.
Chicken coop. Well, it's kind of like a tool shed. There's tools in there. It's tool shed and they got chickens in there.
There was a tool in there when Christian
It's not a chicken coop. It's closed. It's an enclosed space.
Okay, so this is my understanding is like, we're going to go a little bit Kabbalah on this movie. So basically, you're in the real world where her parents die. Then they move up to, basically the story moves into Sweden in the airplane. This is sort of, this would be your Yesod, or your sort of foundational world. This is where they go and you see the camera flip during the thing. This is to show that you're in a different state.
The mirror world.
The mirror world.
Which seems to come up a lot whenever Christian is lying. There's a mirror.
Yeah, so...
And he's going to have to, like, face his sins at the end of the movie, basically.
You know, because he doesn't want to be with her, and the whole time he's only doing it out of obligation because her family died. In fact, he was trying to break up with her when he found out that her family died. And, so basically this guy's kind of sticking with this girl he doesn't want to be with out of obligation, so obviously he's doing kind of shit that's not really what he wants to do in the first place. You know, so he's going to get himself into trouble.
He's half in, he's half out.
Yeah, it's just doesn't make sense. But anyways, they would make it to the land of the never dying sun. This is the whole getting there for the festival. This is the whole midnight sun idea. Basically, they're in the world of Tippereth, the world of just almost raw images. So everything like is like super, super high, and they end up going into initiatory rituals and states during her becoming the May Queen, and then he gets a different initiation where he's basically brought into the vault of the adept, where he talks to the one chick who seems to be in charge of everything.
The magician lady.
The magician lady. She just gives it to him. She asks, "What do you think of Maya?" Which is a girl doing like sex magic, ritual, like runic sex
love spell sex magic.
Yeah.
So she's taking her menstrual fluid and giving it to him in the form of a drink, like spiking his drink with period blood, and then she's also putting her pubes in his food, and presumably she's doing some sort of ceremony and calling upon some power.
Yeah, she's doing some witchy stuff.
She's giving him the flirty eyes.
And like, okay, so she's doing magic to get him. He's basically, her name's Maya, by the way, and if you know anything about
Maya.
Maya means illusion and the whole Hindu thing. So,
and people are pulled, presumably in Buddhism, you know, we're taught that we're pulled into Maya, into incarnation through our desires, and the strongest of which is our sexual desires.
Yeah, so basically, he's brought into the vault of the adept and asked, you know, what do you think of Maya? You know, what do you think of the material world? What do you think of these incarnations? And like the whole time, this story has been like the strength card out of the tarot,
because it shows a piece of art by a Swedish artist.
Like, this is early in the movie, and it shows it blatantly, and it like takes over the screen for a good like 5 minutes after, or not 5, like a whole like 30 seconds after.
Because there's paintings in the background. The one we're talking about, where there's a girl with a flower crown on her head with a hand on a bear. It's by John Bauer. He's a Swedish artist. You can look him up. You see that flower crown, of course, on the May Queen later. And then Christian is the bear.
And there's just a bear there. Like, they even ask, like, early on in the when they get there, is like, are we not going to talk about the bear? To which the one guy who's lured them all into Pele, who has lured them all into his crazy cult, was like, oh, it's a bear.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh yeah, that's a bear. It's just there. It's like almost like, yeah, we're not going to talk about the bear.
The bear is just there.
Yeah, it's just a there bear. We just have it there kind of stuff. But he's just like, it's a bear.
Kind of like Christian is just there.
You know,
during his sexual experience, because when they lure, so after she becomes the May Queen, they kind of lure Christian into. He's had the sex magic. We were building up to this. He had the sex magic worked on him, and they lure him into like this ritual house shed thing where the young girl is all naked and laid out on a bed of flowers, and then strangely there's a whole bunch of the other matriarchs standing naked around her, and this guy basically has to like perform while these ladies start like singing and chanting.
This is the funniest part, because the one chick who's like been trying to do this seems to get like, you know, she's like having a hard time, so she calls one of them over for comfort. And so, you know, one of the girls comes up and starts singing to her to comfort her.
The whole audience just peels off into laughter. It's so good, dude.
Like,
it's so funny.
You know, and you're like, wow, real world, that would be really, really weird to experience. And you just see on this guy Christian's face, just like, he could not get into it.
It was a Seth Rogen experience.
Until, yeah, he did look like Seth Rogen.
Yeah, so
until she starts looking him in the eye and starts singing to him,
yeah, and
that
he's
he
like,
can get down with it. He's like, I'm not the only,
okay,
or I'm not alone here, you know, y'all are comforting me, you know. And
yeah,
when the old lady comes up and starts doing butt stuff, that's when he can actually get off.
He doesn't really do butt stuff. She
just starts pushing on his cheeks, but
she's pumping for him.
Yeah, but it's a funny sort of idea of old lady comes up and does butt stuff.
Actually, I thought it was symbolic of the objectification of the male sexual need in the reproductive formula. Like, you got to have a seed, and so they've reduced him down to just his seed. You know, they are doing the pushing for him at this point. He's not even. Why does he leave the second like he finishes? Because they make him. They're like, you need to finish now. Basically, like, we're done with this.
Because when he's tripping and he looks at this inbred lady, and he freaked out because he saw this creepy inbred lady. And the whole time, the one little inbred seer guy, he was in the corner the whole time this is going on.
Watching it all happen.
Yeah, just really weird and creepy.
Creepy, abusive thing they're
and
doing.
he's the high priestess, if ever there was a high priestess, because his whole thing was he was writing down the book.
Oh, you're right. Yeah, because he sits on like a cotton couch that looks like a big cloud and writes down all the information as it filters unclouded, unfiltered through his psyche, and he writes it all down. But he's in the corner while they're doing this weird sex ritual. And then the second it's over, the guy's like, I think he gets really afraid and he starts running away. That's when he discovers the dude in the shed. And basically,
it's because he saw the inbred chick that was pushing on his butt.
And they blow that weird dust on him, and then he goes into paralysis. Now this is so messed up. Like if you've ever been into like it's like sleep paralysis. Like you can't move and you can't talk, but you can still feel everything. And then they basically they put him in a
bear skin.
They put him in a bear skin that's been hollowed out, and then this is the finale of the movie. They have a big temple that they've been alluding to this whole time. This is a lot like Burning Man, where you know that there's this temple.
You're not
off
supposed
in the
to go in
distance.
it. You're not allowed to go in it.
You are allowed to go in it at Burning Man.
Yeah, but like this thing, they said you're not allowed to go in it.
It's not, but at Burning Man, even then, the temple is not like it's not like the Man, where the Man is like fun and festive, and there's always crazy stuff going on around the Man. But if you go to the temple, it's like a lot of people have put up effigies and they're like crying, and there's wailing, and it's sort of like this raw place. It's not a place you go just to goof off. So there's a little bit of that, and you always see the temple in the distance at Burning Man, and so this sort of plays to that. Of course, it's a horror movie, so it's a lot scarier because you don't know what's going on in there. Well, what ends up happening?
And it's a triangle.
It's a big triangle, which is
tetrahedron.
It's a big tetrahedron. It's yellow orange, so that's like symbolic of the male principle, I would think.
And also the three-dimensional world. So like the one thing you have to remember that in the whole movie, you're not in the real world anymore. You're high up. You're outside of the material world. They're in the land of the ever-living sun. They're like totally not in material world. So the way to see it is this is a giant symbol of the material world. And so as they kill off all these people to make this grand ritual sacrifice, what they're almost doing is they're kind of putting archetypes into the material world and banishing them out of their own lives. Which does seem to correspond with the very end, as they're positioning everybody, they have the beast in the very center.
Yeah, they put the beast, they relate him to the Dark One, which they've been referring to throughout all their rituals and ceremonies. Like they dance around the maypole in defiance of the Dark One, and then they put him in the ritual role of the Dark One, and he takes on like an Azazel type role, basically, where he has to take on the sins of the whole group.
Yeah, they even say they cast him out with all the sins and like banish him to never return. So it's just definitely like an Azazel ritual.
But they took his seed to vivify their bloodline, which is strange.
Oh, that's also a reference to Kanu, who when Marduk killed Kanu, king of the demons, and made man out of him. Also, the girl who took his seed, she was dressed up as the Scarlet Woman immediately after. Like the whore of Babalon who takes the beast's seed.
Oh yeah, totally some thelemic symbolism there.
Yeah, so there's definitely a Thelema vibe. The old men were doing like a really weird Masonic sort of Shriner thing, because the Hierophant guy, he had a like a fez on where its little tassel like covered his entire face like a veil.
Right.
And he was doing he like gave him like drugs so the guy could like fuck the chick, and in the temple with all the bitches singing. But the other time he's like ritualistically banishing him, in the temple before they burn it. And like one of the funniest parts is that the bind rune they have in the end of the movie inside of the temple.
It's Gebo and Inga's, right?
Yeah, it's Gebo and Inga's. But the funny thing is like that's totally like a symbol for like Oxnard.
Oh yeah, it's the Oxnard symbol.
Yeah, like, but they use it like it's like a symbol that people just continuously use over and over and over again.
Gifts. Gebo means gifts and personal relationships, and Ingus means common sense, caring, family love, home, and relief.
Yeah, it gets a little more into spent male energy as well.
And there's 9 of them, which in Kabbalah, well, aren't there the 9 worlds in Yggdrasil, the tree? And in Kabbalah, the sphere of Yesod corresponds to lies and sex and mirrors, which presumably this guy's supposed to reflect on all the bad things that led him to this place, because what else can he do as he's being burned to death? And you saw him when he was lying earlier, he was always being shot in a mirror. Also, there's a corollary between Yesod and Da'ath, which is, the hidden wisdom and the pathway to the the pathways of Set, or the tunnels of Set, all the darkness that is associated with the sphere of Da'ath, like Choronzon, the Dark One, lives there as well, which is the position that
he takes in the very end
of the temple. He's like in the upper middle section.
And he's like in the very, very center. And like the whole theme about Choronzon is that Choronzon's trapped in the very center of creation.
So there's that. And then outside, the May Queen is wearing on her dress the rune of Dagaz, was it? And was it Raido again?
Yeah.
I'd have to double check if it was Raido. But I know Dagaz is one of them. And it's canted, so that means ending, limit, completion, and hopelessness. So that's like her ending, her completion, So what does it all mean in the end? Like, what is the deeper meaning? What is it? Because, okay, so maybe I'm going out on a limb here and why I had to talk about The Shining so much. The Shining has a lot to do with the evil of masculinity, the evils endemic in individuality, like the sins of the sins of the West that came out here and committed genocide against the natives. How Jack Nicholson always has the eagle, and he's always symbolized by the eagle, and how the oppression is always symbolized by the eagle, and how ultimately it leads to genocide and the killing of his family. Of course, he's drawn into he turns into the beast, Asterius, the bull, and chases Danny through the labyrinth. And he ends up frozen to death, where the Dark One in Midsommar ends up being burned to death, both of which come to them, well, like, Jack Nicholson is frozen in the ice, and Christian is frozen in the bear as he's being burned to death. So there's that corollary as well. Possibly, and I feel like I'm afraid of getting burned to death for saying this, it's possible that Midsommar has a current of what is the dark side of femininity? How does that play into the spirit of genocide and darkness and evil in the genetic experiment? Because I don't know what I mean by genetic experiment. That makes me sound like I'm talking about something really important or something. Not really, but okay. Oh, I did notice in the blanket I think Danny's wearing in the big bunk scene, she has the same floor pattern that Danny has on the floor when Danny's playing with his toys, the Apollo 11 scene. It's the same floor pattern on her blanket. And the same floor pattern they use in Toy Story in Sid's house to like make you feel scared. Same floor pattern, and that floor pattern is also associated with Yesod or 9 and the regeneration of new generations of people and generational demons and generational suffering.
Generations of
generations. So
generally,
and of course, The Shining takes its pinnacle in like the snow. We talked about this earlier, and Midsommar is like the opposite. And
I felt it like the very last scene as she's watching the entire thing burn down. The one thing that I noticed was she's like sad and crying and freaked out about the horror and carnage of the situation, but she like seems to change that to a smile of relief and satisfaction.
Yeah, like it's all gone now,
Yeah, but it still seemed like it was playing to like some level of narcissism.
And instead of the spirit of individuality leading to so much demise and isolation in the male side, the Hadith, the infinite contraction, over in the evil side of the femininity, you have this super inclusiveness where it's like everyone is in on this, you know what I mean? It's like it's all about the group, and if the group says it's time for you to die, then it's time for you to die.
And the group goes along with it.
It's whatever the group wants. So I think it might be the dark sister to The Shining a little bit. And I think it also might be...
Or the light sister to the dark shining.
The light sisters of the dark shining.
I don't know.
I don't know.
It seemed like there's a lot of like reversal as well as like promotion of more of like a feminine, like not feminism, because I can't tell whether they're making fun of it or they're being serious about it. And that's the one thing that gets me about all these things. Like, you remember Solo?
Well, isn't that the same thing, though, with all other horror movies? Is like, why are we watching these movies where these chicks just get hacked to pieces? You know, because there is a level of that. Like, why are we watching these movies where just, like, the hot chick gets tortured to death? There's some sort of cathartic joy, as some schadenfreude we get out of
Mean
it.
Girls. That's because there's a lot of hot girls who are mean in high school.
And there's lots of obviously oppressive, mean, insincere dudes. Lots of fuckboys out there.
Yeah. So, I mean, I really think that, like, the whole idea of horror movies in general is, like, our need as a species to, like, feel that gruesomeness again that, like, we used to. Like, our lives have been so easy. Like, we've forgotten that this is a part of it. And so we kind of need that somehow.
Is that what horror movies are about? Is it good for us to see horror movies because it reminds us of what's good in our life, and it tells us, like, don't follow the extremes. Don't run up the stairs when you should be going out the front door, you know? Like,
I think there's, like, a level of that as well as, like, it's hard to say. It's almost like the one thing about horror movies is that the real monster in the horror movie are the people in the horror movie getting killed. Like, you always find out there's really messed up people and they're doing really messed up things, and they kind of get their just desserts, and that seems to be like
that's a motif in horror movies.
Yeah, it's like these people kind of died because of a monster they made, or like the monster got them because these are horrible people.
And that's a motif in John Wick with Baba Yaga.
Yeah.
Because Baba Yaga comes to take all the children who don't fall asleep on time, who disobey.
Yeah, all the bad kids. Yeah. So, like, that's the whole thing about horror movies, is that the people, especially this one, this is like, there is no monster. It's just that the people are killing people.
And we could say that the same evil in the movie, if it is the dark side of femininity, is the same dark side of femininity that they're expounding on in Stairway to Heaven, perhaps. You know, the lady who thinks that everything that glitters is gold.
And then, like, with a word, she can get what she came for. It's basically she can just get what she wants out of it.
Get what she wants whenever she wants.
Regardless of the how.
Which is a mirror to the evil of the male side.
Because, I mean, this was the same thing was going on with the redhead in the entire movie, trying to get with her boyfriend.
Yeah, because she just wants it. She's decided she's going to get it, and he's going to get punished for it.
Yeah. Like, there was really no... Like, because that was the one thing, is that the guy wasn't trying to fuck another chick.
He was really trying to resist, but they really had to load him up with a lot of drugs and do ritual magic on him and present her, like, with her legs spread, like, and have all the social pressure put on him about it. Like, they pushed him to do it, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, so...
And it really plays into that no good deed goes unpunished with him, because, you know, he really should just be like, no, I'm not taking you, sorry. You know?
Yeah, there was a level of...
He probably still would have died, but he probably wouldn't have got burnt to death in a moist bear carcass, which would have kept him alive a lot longer than he would have had he just been naked.
Well, and, like, do you know how bad a bear smells?
Ugh.
Yeah, so he's just in, like, a stinky suit. A stinky, gross meat suit.
And she's in, like, all these wonderful, beautiful flowers.
No, she got, like, bogged down in her flowers.
Well, she was bogged down because she felt kind of bad about burning up her boyfriend.
Did she, though? Because the end, like, made it seem like she was totally cool at the end. And then, like, you, like, realize, oh, wait, now she's stuck in this cult. She's gonna die when she's 72. She's gonna have to jump off that cliff. All the people there are liars, and they lied to their own people about, like the own people that they burnt up. They gave them, like, drugs to make them not feel anything.
Or at least they told them that. It was USAP, and, like, USAP don't do nothing.
Yeah, or some stupid shit, and then they just burnt up and screamed. And, like, as they were screaming, the funniest part about this, like, the funniest part about their final little scream scene, because this is a motif that they continue on throughout the whole movie, was you turn over to me and you say exactly what I was thinking in the moment, which was...
Oh, yeah, it's the election of Donald Trump, because they're all like, they're all freaking out.
Yeah, it's like, why? What? It was the funniest thing. That's all I could think about. And then you were thinking about the same thing.
And I'm sitting between someone like between two people. One's like kind of maybe leans a little more towards the conservative, maybe a little not so. What's the word?
Know.
I don't. Yeah. And then the other one's like a little more left leaning, a little more sympathetic, maybe, to feminism. And I'm like right in the middle, and I tell that same joke to both of them. They both thought it was kind of funny. Just to toot my horn, I'm a funny guy. I'm so funny. Listen to me talk about how funny I am.
Well, you can be for something and dislike other people who are for your same thing.
Sure. I mean, yeah.
Like that's the thing. There's a lot of cool things that attract a lot of lame people.
I think we've talked about most of what we wanted to talk about. It's really hard to put it all in a box, like what it's about. Besides that, we kind of glossed over the fact that there's a lot of like, there's St. John's wort everywhere, and 9 and 90 are all sacred to St. John, and they wish them a happy St. John. So that's in there, but we don't really have much to say about it, except that it has something to do with the deeper current and meaning of the film. And it seems to be, seems to be some sort of an inversion of The Shining going on. And it seems to be purposeful. They use that same pattern in the bunk, and the symbolism being inverted seems relevant. And naming the main character Danny seems relevant as well.
That's a boy's name.
And where The Shining had lots of Kabbalistic symbolism in it, from like perhaps the tarot and Jewish mysticism, as Kubrick was Jewish. You have a lot of runic symbolism and runic mystery.
A lot of runic symbolism.
In this
fact, like every symbol seems to be explaining the scene as you see it in the scene. And the one thing that I found trippy, because like they're doing all this like really weird sort of magic the whole time, because this cult were into runic magic. They're doing all this weird magic, and they're like evoking all these weird emotions, so much so to the point where like the boyfriend Christian and then his black friend who's like the scholar guy, they seem to start arguing like they're a couple, like they're in a relationship.
Well, Christian does pull this really stupid move because
Josh says it, but he says it like he's a goddamn like that guy's boyfriend. And it's like the weirdest, cringiest scene, I thought, because why are you acting like your boyfriend? Like, it seemed really weird,
Well,
right?
Christian is being dumb. Because Josh shows up.
Dumb about everything.
Josh's thesis is about Midsommar rituals and traditions, but Christian comes in and he's like, "Hey, I want that to be my thesis too, but instead of traditions, I just want to do it on this place specifically." And Josh is like, "You what? You just want to do this like just because I'm doing it? Like, you are a weak ass motherfucker. Why are you like?" They get into it, like it's almost like a couple bickering. But Josh is totally in the right, and then Josh, like he's totally in the right.
You could have probably gotten out of there if you didn't ran in and like start taking pictures.
Yeah, he ran in and took pictures of the book, and then he got hit over the head, and he got burned up too. He got buried in the garden, But I guess we talked about the runes. We talked about the connection to Stairway to Heaven. We talked about Midsommar being an inversion of The Shining. Both, like, intuition is central in both of those movies. We talked about how The Shining might have to do more with the evils of individuality and masculinity, and Midsommar might have more to do with the collective, doing just whatever. Because the evil that Jack commits in The Shining is like, he's told he has to. It's the rules. Like, you must kill them because the authority told you to. Like, go. You have to gas. You have, like, because the Nazis had to be drunk to gas the Jews, to do what they did. A lot of them had drinking problems, and they just did it because they were told to. Whereas the evil in Midsommar is they're doing it because they feel like it,
Which everything's so great.
Everything is amazing, So I guess that's our. We talked about the runes. We talked about Stairway to Heaven. We talked about males and females and feminism and the evils of masculinity and femininity. And I guess that's the whole rabbit for Midsommar. We hope you enjoyed it.
Like, we totally like glossed over all of the very, very blatant symbolism, because really that's some like,
just go on YouTube.
That's some low grade normie shit.
They just tell you that stuff right off the bat, like in all the YouTube videos. So we tried to go a little deeper into the stuff that you might not hear about elsewhere. So
yeah, you're gonna hear everything about like the 4 seasons and the 4 stages of life and like
blah blah blah
blah blah blah blah blah.
So anyway,
that's the boring stuff. The real good stuff is the psychedelic parts.
At this point in the game, if you've listened this far, you are probably one of the few people that would even maybe possibly consider sending us some money to support us. I pay like $16 a month just for hosting, and then we spend a few hours doing researching and recording and pissing off our roommates by being overly loud. And, you know, it costs...
I don't know what you're talking about. I'm quiet as fuck on this thing.
Yeah, you're quiet when you're recording and no other time. So, if you have any empathy for us, or just a lot of money, or just have like a strange hair up your ass, or just like, you know,
you want us to be better at this.
Want us to be better, send us some money. We have a subscribe star. It's going to be going up in the next few days. So if you're hearing this, we probably have a link on whatever you're listening to. Click it. Find us on Subscribe Star, The Whole Rabbit, and for $4.99 a month, you can send us money for $4.99 a month. That's
for $4.99 a month. You become a
person who sends us money for $4.99 a month.
Yeah, you become the very, very person who makes this thing happen.
And as time goes on, we're going to add a lot of different things to that at the same low price of $4.99.
We're talking T-shirts.
Like, maybe the upper tiers will have some crazy stuff, and maybe those will be more than $4.99. We don't know. We're going to figure it out. We'll let you know. But here's what we're planning. We're planning to, if you are on our Subscribe Star, not yet, but you in the future, you're going to have access to the episodes early. And then, even better, you're going to have even earlier access to the unedited shows before they even get edited, so you can hear all the dumb stuff we say and how stupid we actually sound. Then, we're going to have classes that teach more specifically on the stuff we talk about, because we're knowledgeable about tarot, so you shouldn't expect to see, like, we're not going to teach you runes necessarily right away. Well, maybe Rona can. Maybe Rona can, because actually Rona knows runes really good. But basically, it's like you subscribe, and you'll have access to these videos where it's like, Whole Rabbit explains the Fool card, the Whole Rabbit explains the Magician card, and maybe we'll teach you a little bit about magic and stuff, because those are our most popular episodes. People like to listen to those the most. And so if you subscribe to us, you're going to get access to the real raw stuff that we have to share.
Yeah, because if we're getting money for this, we're putting way more effort into it.
Yeah, we can put more effort into it. We just really wanted to get started. We feel like we've gotten started. We're talking about Fnords and brand new movies. The ball's rolling, baby. So we got the Subscribe Star going up soon. If you like us, send us some money. Thank you for listening. Eat carrots and shoot lasers.
All right.
Shoot lasers.